Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bailey Broadcast. It's your host, Tommy B. Today, we're going to be talking a spoiler-filled review of Spider-Man No Way Home. You might have seen my video last night. It was kind of my instant reaction to seeing the movie, and after sleeping on it, I admit it is still my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. This movie was so good, and we're really going to deep dive into it today. But first, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And we will get started by the opening of the movie. You know, that kind of takes off from where Spider-Man Far From Home ends. I knew going into it that that's where we were going to take off, you know, the Spider-Man's identity, Peter Parker's identity being revealed to everybody in the whole world. And the intensity of that whole scene, being surrounded by people, MJ being, you know, attacked almost, if you will, was very, you know, kind of get you, you know, ready for what's going to happen in this movie. There's so many things in this movie that I just love. I'm not going to break down the whole movie. I'm going to just talk about my favorite parts, the cameos, the supporting cast that we get in this movie, and really just tell you why it's my favorite Spider-Man movie. The first thing I have to say is it is such a great movie because it really deep dives into Peter Parker. Not just Spider-Man, but Peter Parker, which we really haven't gotten a lot of anyways, in the MCU. You know, the first two movies, you know, they do a good job at kind of setting the foundation, if you will. But you can almost see all three of these movies as being the sum of the origin story of Peter Parker as Spider-Man. The acting was so well done by Tom Holland, Zendaya. Marissa Tomei as Aunt May was phenomenal. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I mean, they all did a fantastic job. But like I said last night, this was a true love letter to fans of the character, of Peter Parker, of Spider-Man. You know, I wanted to see a story about a kid who has so much on his plate and how he deals with that responsibility, which, you know, we're going to kind of talk about a little bit more later. But this was just a great telling of Peter Parker and what he deals with, not just as Spider-Man, but as a kid who's going from high school, getting ready to go to college, and the struggles that he deals with once his identity is revealed. This is the only superhero in the MCU, technically, that has a secret identity. And the importance of that to him, especially as a kid, that goes out the window when everyone believes that he kills Mysterio, and the ramifications of that. And that first act, I thought the pacing was great, but ultimately, you know, when we kind of see the department, you know, what is it called? Damage control coming in and questioning each one of them was really well done. I loved how MJ was just like, I know my rights. I don't, you know, I'm not going to tell you anything. You're not going to crack me. I know what you're going to say. And then going to Ned, who just kind of, you know, gives it all away without meaning to, was really kind of fun. But then, you know, we get our first huge cameo, which in my theater made everyone scream, which was Charlie Cox's Daredevil from the Netflix series coming back as Matt Murdock, as Peter's attorney, and just how great it was to see him in that role in the MCU, and kind of get a quick glimpse of what he's going to be kind of doing. Obviously, we don't know where he's going to show up next. But, you know, they're talking about, you know, Peter's options and whatnot. And all of a sudden, someone throws a brick through the window. And you think, oh, Spider-Man's going to catch it. But no, oh, here comes Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil, catching the brick. And Peter's like, who are you? He's like, I'm a really good attorney. You know, I mean, it was just the comedy in this movie that was so great. But the overall balance of every emotion in this movie was fantastic. I mean, comedy one-liners that really hit. I don't think not one of them didn't work for me. But then, you know, with the sad moments and the, you know, just huge heart aching, you know, experiences. Not to fast forward too much, but when Aunt May dies, when she gets hit by Green Goblin's glider, I thought, holy crap, she's a goner. Like, she got hit so hard, I thought she's done for. But then she gets back up, and it looks like, for a little while that she's going to be okay. But then you see like little signs of her, going through some trauma. And right before, it gets me choked up. Right before she, passes away, she gives the one line that we've always heard in the previous Spider-Man movies. The one thing that Stan Lee created with Peter Parker was his saying, and Aunt May delivers so perfectly. And I almost liked her delivery of it more than the Uncle Ben versions of it, which was, with great power comes great responsibility. And it was just, you could hear a pin drop in our theater. It was so quiet, and people were just, you could feel the sadness in the room. It was beautiful. But at that moment, to deliver that line was so meaningful, because at that moment, you have so much rage and hatred towards Green Goblin happening, and just, you could feel him being torn on what he wanted to do, which was opposite of what she wanted. She wanted to help each one of these villains. That was what, with great power comes great responsibility, meant to her. And he had to decide, if that was what he was going to continue to do, or if he was going to go over that edge, which, you just couldn't blame him for. I mean, he just lost the last family member needed in his life at that moment. And so it was just a super sad moment. But again, the balance throughout the whole 2.5 hours of action, comedy, drama, it just worked so well for me. When we, again, going back to that first cameo with Matt Murdock, it was like, okay, I know I'm going to like this movie. And it didn't disappoint, when he goes and finds Doctor Strange because he, wants to help his friends get into MIT. His first thought was, well, let's make everyone forget their memory, without realizing he had another, way of fixing this before going to Doctor Strange, which was just going and talking to the dean of admissions about, letting it slide. His friends were innocent. Let them get in. He doesn't care about himself. And so Doctor Strange is like, literally, bro, you could have done that before coming to see me. Like, what the hell, I mean, I thought that was pretty funny. And obviously, it was interesting to see that, during the 5 years that Doctor Strange was blipped out, Wong was technically the Sorcerer Supreme. And so, Doctor Strange almost needed the permission of Wong to do that spell in the ruins. And it obviously goes sideways, and by not doing the ritual correctly, it opens up the multiverse. And I'm telling you, the fight scenes in this movie were so cool, especially the very, hand-to-hand combat ones between him and Green Goblin and the rest of the villains. But then you get this super trippy fight scene between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man over, the box that's holding the spell kind of together at the moment. Was so amazingly visually beautiful that I could have watched that almost, as much as the rest of the film. But I'm glad that they didn't, make it purely about their kind of, relationship. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man have a great relationship in the comics and in other movies and so forth, and, the TV show. But for them to make it focused on Peter and the movie to, stay true to the storyline and not get too kind of, swept away by all the mystical, aspect of Doctor Strange was really well, it was handled great. And, how he beats Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension was fantastic. He's like, oh, this is all geometry. I'm good at math. I know geometry. And he beats Doctor Strange at his own game. I thought was really cool. And he's going, to Ned and MJ. He's like, I beat Doctor Strange. I mean, that was pretty fun. So it was a great, dynamic between them two. But then, you start seeing Spider-Man going to capture all the other villains that have broke through the multiverse, and how they handled each one of these villains and gave them a little more depth to their character was just, I mean, I can't say enough about John Watts and the direction he did for this movie. I mean, I fell more in love with Jamie Foxx's Electro, and the pain that he had, and Lizard, you know, even Sandman, who I actually think is a very underrated villain. I loved his, you know, kind of backstory even more. And it was just great to see all these previous villains come back in one film and be handled with such care and attention to detail. Yeah, I really just think this was the best Spider-Man movie they've ever done. And then you know, you go through the moments of, okay, Spider-Man's decided he's going to help, you know, each one of these villains get better before setting them back to where they came from, and not just letting them die at the fate that had already been laid out before them. And they're in Happy Hogan's apartment, and you know, you get these great little Easter eggs throughout the movie. You have Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and Dr. Osborn. You know, he kind of calls back to one of his famous lines in the original Spider-Man movie. He's like, you know, I'm a bit of a scientist myself. Like, that was just awesome. And just seeing them work together to try to fix Dr. Octopus's inhibitor in the back of his neck was cool, and for that to work was great. But then you feel there's the moment in that scene where Peter Parker's, you know, Tom Holland's spider sense is going off, and you know, it gets quiet. The sound, the music, the score stops, and it really makes that scene more impactful, because you're like, okay, what's happening? Is it you know, J. Jonah Jameson that he senses down below and has found them, or is it something else? And then you realize, no, it's Green Goblin, and he webs Green Goblin because he knows that Dr. Osborn has been playing him this whole time, and it's really the Goblin that's in control. And it is so, I mean, Willem Dafoe is just a phenomenal actor, one of the best. You know, at 66 years old, for him, you know, apparently doing all the stunt himself, and bringing that character back to life was just amazing. I mean, I can't say enough about that guy. He's a great actor, and he flips the switch on Peter and makes all the other villains kind of, you know, back him instead of, you know, Peter, who's trying to help them, and they're all kind of on board with it at that moment. You know, Electro's a little iffy on if he wants to be normal again, because he can taste this new power in this new universe. And once Green Goblin kind of gets to them, the rest is history. And you have this incredible fight scene between Green Goblin and Peter Parker, and it is intense, it is brutal, it is the best hand-to-hand combat I've seen with Spider-Man in any of these movies so far. There's one scene where he like flips Green Goblin up and then uses his webs and shoots himself down through the floor. I mean, it was intense, but the whole time, you know, Peter's giving it to Green Goblin, and it brings me back to like the Dark Knight, like Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, Green Goblin's just kind of smiling at him, like he's getting punched and it's not even phasing him. He's like, with all that power, you just can't really let go and do what needs to be done and kill me, because your aunt is convinced you that this is the way to go. And it's true. Like, it was just such a struggle, and such an emotional, intense scene. I just loved how it was, you know, choreographed and just filmed, and you know, the tension in the moment was just so well done. To have it finish with the villains all kind of getting away, and Aunt May dying, it was just a huge moment that had the whole theater just kind of in awe. And you know, he kind of, you know, goes to mourn the loss of his Aunt May, his mother, really, if you think about it. I mean, this is the person that's been watching over him for years. And for him to go through that moment where he's almost in denial that she's gone, you know, he's like, come on, May, look at me, you know, and she's just lying there lifeless. And it was just, oh, it was so well done. Marissa Tomei, this was her best performance by far, and I just can't say enough of what she brought to her role in this film. And then we get, you know, back kind of cut to the next scene where you have Ned and MJ kind of just trying to find where Peter is, and they can't. And Ned's got the sling ring on his fingers, and all of a sudden he's able to open up a portal, and MJ's like, look for Peter, and Ned's like, okay, and all of a sudden he opens up a portal, and you see Spider-Man, and you're like, oh, okay, they found him, but something's different. This is not Tom Holland's Peter Parker. This guy's a little long and slanky, and the costume looks different. And all of a sudden, he comes through the portal, and I at the time I'm like, holy shit, is this who I think it is? And at that moment, when he takes off his mask and it's Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, the whole theater screamed and cheered and applauded. Like, it was so dope, and it was such a great scene because you have Ned and MJ who are like, who are you? And he's like, whoa, is this, like he's going with all these scientific terms trying to, make, sense of what's happening right now. And it was like, it was great because MJ's like, you got to prove to me that you're Spider-Man, that you're Peter Parker. And he's like, okay, what do you want me to do? And, he ends up hanging from the ceiling by his fingers and just hanging. And she's like, no, that's not good enough. He's like, seriously? She's like, crawl on the ceiling, will you? And Ned's mom is like, will you get that cobweb in the corner? And he ends up doing it. And she's like, okay. But that whole moment, I mean, Zendaya was so great in this movie. I really loved her performance. And Ned, too. The kid, Jacob Batalon, he did great. I thought their time together, their chemistry was just as entertaining as it is with, Tom Holland. So, and then all of a sudden, another portal opens up, and we have Tobey frickin' Maguire walk through, and you have the most I was speechless because I did not think, with all the leaks that had happened with this film, we all kind of assumed that it was going to be a matter of time between, that they show up in this film, but we didn't know, are they going to be quick cameos? Like, how long are they going to be in this film? And you come to find out that they're a huge supporting cast. I mean, they're in basically the whole third act of the film, and their interaction between all three Peter Parkers was the best moments. Like, I will watch them just talking to each other for a whole movie. It was great. The comedic, quips and their timing with one another, their chemistry with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland was perfect. And when they're kind of making fun of Tobey Maguire's web shooting coming through the body, and then Andrew Garfield's like, no, I'm the weakest Spider-Man. I didn't have all these cool, fights with aliens and whatnot. The best I got was a guy in a robotic rhino suit. I mean, it was great. And then Toby's like, no, you are great. I mean, it was such a fun movie. It was so entertaining. It was everything that you could have hoped for when I heard of the possibility of a multiverse Spider-Man movie. And for them to do it and to really succeed at bringing these actors back and have the chemistry that they did with one another and tell a story that's still focused on Tom Holland's Peter Parker was so great. When they find Tom Holland on top of the school building, mourning his loss, and he's kind of settled down and he's not really crying anymore, but then MJ and Ned both hug him and they're all just sobbing together. You can't help but cry a little bit. Like, come on, man. Like, that was such great acting. And then you get a shot of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield at the top of the clock tower, or whatever it was, at that building. And it looked like a straight comic book panel right out of, an issue. And they jump down and they're like, we know what you're going through. We've been there. And Tom Holland's Peter was like, don't tell me that. That's not going to help me. And, they find this common moment where they all knew that with great power comes great responsibility. It was told to each one of them, by either Uncle Ben or Aunt May, and they all have their own losses. Tobey Maguire lost his best friend. Andrew Garfield lost Gwen Stacy. And I gotta tell you again, okay, so Tom Holland is my favorite Peter Parker. But if there's one thing that kind of told me about Andrew Garfield, I knew he was a great actor. But it just, he did such a great job in his role in this movie. The emotional delivery of every line that he said or every action that he did was so good. I mean, there's a moment, later on in the third act when they're fighting, all the villains. MJ's falling off the building. You see it in one of the trailers, but you don't see her get caught. Actually, Tom Holland goes down to save her first, but gets taken out by Green Goblin's glider, and it is Andrew Garfield who saves her. And you see the sense of redemption in his face, and he asks her, "Are you okay?" And he gets choked up because he knows that he is redeemed because he wasn't able to save Gwen Stacy, and MJ asks, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay," and it was such a beautiful moment. I mean, there's a handful of moments in this movie where you're getting teary-eyed, you're crying, you're laughing. I mean, this is, again, I said it last night in my, instant reaction. This is the first movie, probably since Avengers Endgame, where I laughed, cried, screamed, and cheered, and gasped all in the same movie. I mean, it had it all, and I just thoroughly enjoyed myself. The way that they delivered this movie, the execution on this movie from beginning to end was spot on. I mean, I just loved it. There was, a few bits and pieces that I thought could have been better. I thought the CGI on Sandman could have been a little bit better, but again, if you compare it to him in, I think, was it 2007 maybe, when he was in Spider-Man 3, yeah, it's better than that, but I don't know. It was just a great movie that finishes off with such a brutal fight scene, again, with Green Goblin and Tom Holland's Peter Parker, that you think he's going to kill him, and ends up having Tobey Maguire save Green Goblin from being killed, and Tobey just looking at Tom Holland's Peter, and like, you can see with his eyes, he's saying, "No, this is not the way. This is not the answer." But then, freaking Goblin being Goblin stabs Tobey Maguire through the stomach or where the side. Man, I don't want to kill this son of a bitch, okay? This guy deserves to die. But no, they end up, putting the antidote in his neck and, kind of curing him as well. So, it just stay true to the character of Peter Parker. And again, this is a Peter Parker movie. This is a Spider-Man movie, yes, of course, but this was the development of Peter Parker as a man and as a hero in his own right, and knowing the difference between right and wrong, and it was just so well executed. The other moment that obviously I have to talk about really fast is when you have all three Spider-Man, in their, pose, and then swinging through the Statue of Liberty together, attacking these guys, as a team, was fucking awesome. Like, it was just, I was probably having the biggest smile on my face. Everyone was screaming. It was just, and that's why I highly recommend seeing this movie in the theater, in the biggest screen you can, with a bunch of people, because that theater reaction as a whole, it gives you chills, because everyone, who are fans of these movies and a fan of Spider-Man, all feel the same thing at the same time, and the payoff is just so powerful. So I love it. And then for it to end with Peter deciding not to tell Ned and MJ who he is, because he doesn't want his friends and the woman that he loves to go through any more pain or suffering, it was just spot on. It almost reminds you of Peter in the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. He sacrifices his love so that they could be free of his his destiny. And it's so beautiful. It really is. If we ever see them again, who knows? But for him, and then at the end, to have that apartment, which is iconic, it goes back. I mean, the nostalgia in this movie is just handled with grace. It's phenomenal. He goes into that apartment that is identical to the one that he had in the original and in the comics too. And then the classic Spider-Man suit that he makes, with the red and blue, and just the design of it. And now the whole world doesn't know that he's Spider-Man anymore. He can go on and start helping people. He's listening on to the police scanner, and it is handled so well, at the same time setting up a future for Spider-Man 4 possibly, more than likely in the MCU. Kevin Feige has already announced that they're working hard on developing a Spider-Man 4. I can't wait to see where it goes. Hopefully it's now Peter Parker in college for the next 3 movies. We'll see if they do that. They have so many options, going forward, as far as, maybe Miles Morales comes into the picture as Spider-Man in high school, and you have college Peter, kind of being there for a high school Miles, and in that kind of role model, figure. I think that would be cool. I love this movie. The 2 post-credit scenes were fantastic as well. However, the first one with Tom Hardy's Venom was a little bit of a letdown. I really would have liked to see him, pop up during the actual movie. That didn't happen. But then I thought, okay, cool. They're setting him up in here. He was brought into the universe, and all of a sudden, he's being told by the bartender, okay, so there's a man in a tin suit, there's multiple heroes, there's this and that. He's like, I guess I should go to New York. All for him to be snapped back into his own universe without any interaction was kind of a letdown, I must admit. I really wanted to see a little bit more than that. With that said, I don't know how, it's kind of a weird plot, point that I think was not handled well, but the symbiote that was left in Peter Parker's universe, we'll see what happens there. I mean, I guess they could leave it open to where the symbiote finds Peter Parker, and he, gets the black suit again, or maybe the symbiote finds this, universe's version of Eddie Brock, not played by Tom Hardy. Why you would do that, I don't know. It's kind of a weird way to end that, but I guess we'll see. And then the second post-credit scene, which was basically the first trailer for Doctor Strange 2, was pretty awesome. We get our first glimpse at Scarlet Witch, who I thought was going to be more of an antagonist. I mean, from the trailer, it looked like she's going to be helping Doctor Strange right off the get-go. But we'll have to see. And then you see Baron Mordo back with a new look, which looked dope. You get a little bit of America Chavez. You get Shuma Gorath, which was rumored to be the main villain of the movie. And then you get introduced to an evil Doctor Strange. Like, my mind went, what the hell? Like, this is going to be some hell of a movie. It's got that horror vibe to it. So I can't wait to see what happens with that. We luckily won't have to wait very long for that movie. I think it was pushed back to May now. So it is what it is. But yeah, guys, that's my overall spoiler review of Spider-Man No Way Home. It right now is my second favorite Marvel MCU movie of all time. I love this movie. Spider-Man is my favorite hero of all time, and I thought this was the best way to end the Homecoming trilogy. So thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you've seen the movie, leave your comments down below. Tell me your favorite part, your favorite, Spider-Man of all time. And we'll see you next time on the Bailey Broadcast. Take care, guys, all right?